Stay 3 minutes and I'll hand you something most channels won't. A way to measure outrage that doesn't flatter you. If you finish this video, you'll know whether your heat lowers harm or only raises your heart rate, and you'll be able to prove it without hashtags. Here's the provocation. The internet taught you that volume equals virtue. Buddhism says volume is metabolic, not moral. Heat feels holy because it collapses complexity. You get the candy of clarity without the cost of contact. Righteous anger promises courage and delivers caricature, a clean story with a dirty bill that someone else pays later. I'm not here to narcotize you with be calm. I am here to indict the outrage economy and the spiritual bypass that scolds you for being human. Anger isn't the enemy. Unaccountable anger is. And unaccountable anger is the house style of our age. Trending, bonding, intoxicating, and profoundly unserious about outcomes beyond the mirror. Buddhism has bad news for your adrenaline. The body's thrill at moral certainty is not the same thing as compassion. It's a pleasant mistake, like mistaking the smell of food for being fed. The tradition never banned heat, it domesticated it. Heat becomes a tool when it is aimed at nouns and bounded by care. Ill will via pada is the hindrance. Clean, surgical anger is not. But the line is thin and rarely taught because it ruins the show. Outrage fills rooms. Compassion fixes them. Right now, platforms pay for the former. By the end of this episode, you will know why righteous heat so often fails the room, why wrathful compassion is a different animal entirely, and why the only credible test is strangers, safer, sooner, not applause, not enemies humiliated, not your pulse singing that you were on the side of light. Every flame war follows the same 5-beat sequence. Ping Valence Premise Posture Performance. Ping a clip headline sentence. Valence, the body tags it pleasant or unpleasant. Premise, what this really is. Traitor, savior, abuse, nothing burger. Posture, how people like me are supposed to lean. Performance, the share, the dunk, the manifesto that buys belonging. The pipeline is addictive because it saves energy. It spares you from lingering in the ambiguity where empathy and evidence live. Buddhism doesn't scold the valence. That's physics. It attacks the premise reflex that confuses bodily urgency with reality. Righteous heat accelerates premise, abolishes posture choice, and cracks the bottle on performance before contact is complete. You feel heroic. The room loses oxygen. The texts call ill will a perceptual toxin. It narrows and hardens the field until only enemy shapes remain. This is metabolically efficient and morally seductive. But Dharma is engineering, not theatre. It points to the hinge, the half second between valence and premise, where attention can ask, what is this actually? What not? How do I look if I choose X? Outrage hates that hinge. Compassion lives there. Outrage says, if you hesitate, you're complicit. Compassion says, if you don't hesitate, you'll miss fire. The difference is measurable. Outrage optimizes for identity coherence. Compassion optimizes for harm reduction. One fills timelines, the other fills calendars with boring logistics, calls, policies, repair. The pipeline won't change. The training is to break the auto premise and refuse performance that doesn't cash out as protection for someone other than you. Heat simplifies. That's the drug. Ambiguity is expensive. Anger is cheap. In heat, your nervous system enjoys the illusion of mastery. Edges sharpen, motives crystallize, your tribe glows, cognitive load drops, and with it, curiosity. The problem isn't that anger is wrong, it's that anger pretends to be evidence. I feel it strongly becomes it must be true. Then everyone must see it. Then anyone who doesn't is corrupt. This ladder is fast, glorious, and anti-epistemic. It's also exportable. Whole movements monetize the ladder by turning your heat into predictability. You become a vending machine. Insert trigger, receive posture. Buddhism's insult to our age. Valence lies. Pleasant not equal to true, unpleasant not equal to false. Righteous is not a property of sensations. It's a claim about consequences. Does the heat lower risk for the targeted? Does it open a door they can walk through this week? Does it repair a harm with nouns, timelines, and receipts? If not, righteous is branding. But anger gets people moving sometimes. It also gets people organized around the performance of purity, where policy dies and purity spirals, eat the very folks you swore to defend. Outrage is spectacular at producing stories about help. It is less consistent at producing help. The Dharma's criterion is boring. Can the room breathe? Is speech cleaner? Are promises kept faster? If your heat can't hit those, it's not wrong. It's incomplete, and incomplete heat burns the nearest oxygen first. Wrathful compassion is not nice. It is precise. It names behaviors, not souls. It sets boundaries that protect bodies now. It sets consequences without revenge. It ends when safety begins. Ill will wants a story. Wrathful compassion wants a door. Ill will runs on audience. Wrathful compassion runs on targets. Those who need shelter, those who must stop. If your fire gets brighter when the crowd grows, suspect vanity. If your fire cools the moment a corridor opens for the harmed, believe it. Think of wrathful compassion as time-boxed, outcome-bounded force. It resists capture by charisma because it keeps receipts and allows review. It resists cruelty because it refuses abstractions. No demonology, just verbs. Hit, lied, withheld, stole. Therefore, this remedy. It resists drift because it retires when its job is done. Ill will never retires. It needs fuel. Wrathful compassion is expensively kind. It costs you the pleasure of dehumanization and pays you with rooms that stop bleeding. That's why so few practice it. You can't be a brand and wield it cleanly. You must be answerable to the harmed, to the accused, to the bystanders who will live with your aftermath. Old Buddhist art shows deities with fangs, not to license cruelty, but to signal precision, surgery, not arson. The modern translation, heat that survives audit. The canon's old rubric, true, beneficial, timely, kind, spoken with a mind of goodwill, is not a tea ceremony. It's a compression algorithm for avoiding collateral damage. Viral speech flips the order. Timely, viral, identity affirming, may be true, almost never reparative. Right speech reverses it, true enough to withstand cross-examination, beneficial enough to matter to someone, not you, timed to conditions rather than the outrage clock, delivered in a tone that keeps doors open instead of slamming them to look pure. Kind isn't softness, it's design. Phrasing that lowers defensiveness so remedies can enter. The practical scent without giving you tactics, fewer adjectives, more nouns, fewer motives assigned, more behaviors named, fewer absolutist claims, more checkable specifics, fewer threats to identity, more offers of constraint. This stops. Here's the policy. Here's the oversight. Sarcasm performs intelligence while slowly poisoning rooms. It wins comments and loses coalitions. Outrage loves adjectives because they are non-falsifiable. Compassion loves nouns because they pin the world to a surface we can fix. If your speech leaves opponents permanently monstrous, you married the dopamine and divorced the Dharma. If your speech lets even an adversary find a lawful exit, you used fire like an adult. Where procedures are weak, mobs become policy. Where grievance channels don't exist, timelines substitute. Where budgets hide and power doesn't rotate, outrage becomes the only court that ordinary people can access. Brutal, biased, sometimes necessary, always expensive. Buddhism doesn't worship order, it disenchants charisma so order can work. The point of vows, precepts, and counsels isn't piety, it's friction to slow heat into testimony, to translate pain into remedy, to prevent a single personality, yours or mine, from becoming the law. Purity spirals are heat without brakes. They begin with protection and end with cannibalism because there is no off-ramp once belonging is earned by fire and never by repair. A dharmic room names harms, publishes rules, rotates authority, and audits itself before the scandal, so outrage isn't the only tool left. In such rooms, anger appears, does its job, and sits down because mechanisms exist that are boring and just. In rooms built for performance, anger must stay standing. There is nothing else to trust. If you wonder why righteous heat fails, start here. Without governance, fire is forced to be God, and gods eat their children. The intimacy room, you're right, they're wrong, your heat is pure. Then why is your apology always a paragraph about their flaws? The lie, my anger is care. The truth, care repairs. If the nearest human keeps paying the cooling bill of your righteousness, you're running a private climate war. The movement room, numbers spike, enemies trend, donors purr. 6 months later, nothing dull and structural changed. The lie, we raised awareness. The truth, awareness that doesn't become policy is publicity. If your heat cannot be translated into clauses, contracts, and calendar items, it will become folklore. The platform room outrage gives you an edge, then makes you predictable, then makes you replaceable. The lie, I'm educating. The truth, you're being farmed. If your fire dies when the camera is off, you built a kiln for your own attention, not a shelter for anyone else's life. Buddhism's bet is boring and radical. Consequence over charisma. You will look smaller. You will become useful. Rooms you never get credit for will breathe better because your heat learned to hold nouns. That's the kind of victory that doesn't trend and outlives trends. I'm not asking you to cool what should burn. I'm asking you to fire your audience and hire outcomes. If your heat can name behaviors, open doors, publish receipts, survive review, and then retire, it's compassion with fangs. If it can't, it's a costume, expensive, addictive, and lethal to rooms you claim to love. Outrage is a great ignition and a terrible engine. Build engines. Let ignition be brief. Here is the line I want stamped on your mirror in unfriendly font. If your anger doesn't make strangers safer by Friday, it wasn't righteous. It was recreational. Keep the blaze that cuts chains. Kill the bonfire that cooks your own halo.